They laughed at the poor food seller for feeding a stranger. But no one knew the widow she protected carried a secret rich men would kill for. And on the hottest afternoon of the year, a billionaire arrived, asking only one question. Where is the woman who used to eat here for free? In the heart of Nairobi, where dust rose with every passing bus and the smell of frying mandazi floated through crowded streets, lived Amina, a food seller with pockets as empty as her promises to herself. Yet every day, she shared her little with a homeless widow, Mama Lillian, whose silence carried storms. People mocked Amina. They said kindness couldn't fill an empty stomach. But Amina's heart refused to harden. She didn't know that her simple generosity was planting seeds in a story far bigger than her painful life. The market buzzed like a restless hive as Amina flipped chapatis on her rusty pan. Sweat trickled down her forehead, but her eyes kept drifting toward the old corner where Mama Lillian always sat, thin, trembling, wrapped in the same faded blue shawl she'd worn for years. "Bibi, your food," Amina said gently, placing a plate of rice and beans beside her. The widow raised her head slowly, her eyes soft but haunted, like they had seen too much darkness and forgotten the shape of joy. "You don't owe me this," Mama Lillian whispered. Amina smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But hunger doesn't care who's worthy." Some vendors scoffed behind her. "Why waste food on someone who can't pay? She's cursed. Haven't you seen how birds avoid her? Amina, your kindness will drown you one day." Amina ignored them. She always did. But today, something was different. When Mama Lillian reached for the plate, her hands shook harder than usual. Her gaze darted around the market, watching strangers too closely, as if expecting danger to step out of the shadows at any moment. Amina knelt beside her. "Is someone following you?" she whispered. The old woman hesitated, then nodded. A cold shiver crawled up Amina's spine. "Who?" she asked. Mama Lillian's voice cracked. "Someone powerful, someone who thinks I know a truth I should never have heard." Amina's breath caught. "What truth?" But before the widow could answer, the sound of 3 black SUVs rumbled toward the market, engines deep, windows tinted, moving with military precision. Vendors froze. Shoppers scattered. Amina's heart pounded. Mama Lillian grabbed her hand with surprising strength. "They've found me," she whispered. And as the SUVs stopped in front of Amina's stall, a tall man stepped out, sharp suit, dark sunglasses, bodyguards surrounding him like shadows. He removed his glasses slowly, his expression unreadable. "I'm looking for a woman," he said, his voice steady but dangerous. "A homeless widow," he added. "Thin. Wears a blue shawl." His cold eyes locked directly onto Amina. "Where is she?" Amina felt her heartbeat thudding against her ribs as the tall stranger's gaze drilled into her. The market, normally alive with chatter and bargaining, had fallen into an unnatural silence, like the air itself was holding its breath. He stood with a stillness that made her uneasy. His clean-shaven jaw, expensive suit, and flawless shoes clashed violently with the dusty ground beneath him. Every move he made was controlled, rehearsed, like a man used to commanding rooms much grander than a noisy market square. From the corner of her eye, Amina saw Mama Lillian inch backward, trembling. The widow's fingers dug painfully into Amina's arm. The billionaire repeated, slower this time, "Where is the woman in the blue shawl?" Amina swallowed hard, forcing her voice to stay steady. "There are many people who pass by here." I don't know who you mean." "A lie. A fragile one." The man tilted his head slightly, studying her. Behind him, the bodyguard scanned the area, hands near their earpieces, eyes sharp. Their presence felt like a storm cloud hovering inches above the ground. "Let me make this simple," he said. "Her name is Lillian Kamau. I know she eats here every day. I know you give her the food." He raised an eyebrow. "So, I will ask only once more, where is she?" Amina's breath hitched. He knew everything. Before she could answer, Mama Lillian squeezed her arm again, hard enough to make Amina wince. The old woman's eyes were wide, filled with something that looked almost like pleading. "Don't say anything. Don't give me up." Amina's heart twisted painfully. Why was a billionaire looking for a homeless widow? What truth was so heavy that it made the widow hide in markets, alleyways, and abandoned corners like a hunted animal? She needed time. A few seconds. A distraction. "I don't understand what your interest is in her," Amina said carefully. "She's just an old woman who is not what she appears to be," the billionaire interrupted sharply. A chill ran down Amina's spine. "What do you mean?" she whispered. He stepped closer. His cologne, a strange mix of cedar and cold steel, hit her nose. "You don't need to know. All you need to do is tell me where she is." Amina forced herself not to look back at the corner where Mama Lillian hid. But he noticed the flicker in her eyes. He turned his head slowly, following her involuntary glance. Amina's stomach dropped. "No. No. Please don't." But his eyes locked onto the widow like a hawk spotting a wounded bird. "There," he murmured. The moment his body shifted toward her, Mama Lillian staggered to her feet and clutched the shawl around her thin shoulders. Her voice cracked with fear. "Please, leave me alone." Vendors gasped. Some stepped back. Others leaned in, curious, whispering theories. The billionaire approached her with a strange blend of urgency and restraint, like he was torn between anger and something softer. "Lillian," he said, his voice lower now, "you can't keep running." "I don't want anything from you," the widow rasped. "That's not true," he replied. "You have something that belongs to me." Amina blinked. "Belongs to him?" Mama Lillian shook her head violently. "I did nothing wrong." His jaw tightened. "You heard everything that night. And you wrote it down." The crowd murmured louder. Amina felt her knees weaken. What night? What had she heard? What had she written? Before Amina could ask, the billionaire snapped his fingers. Two guards stepped forward, but not to seize her. Instead, the billionaire raised his hand sharply, stopping them. "No force," he warned. "She's fragile." There was something in his tone that confused Amina, an undertone of guilt, or regret. Mama Lillian took a shaky step backward, clutching Amina's wrist like a lifeline. "Amina," she whispered, her voice faint but urgent, "don't let them take me." "Not yet." Amina swallowed. "Why are they after you?" "Because," the widow whispered, eyes clouding with tears, "I witnessed a crime they buried. A truth powerful men spent fortunes to erase." Amina felt her mouth go dry. What truth? But before the widow could speak, the billionaire cut in sharply. "Don't listen to her," he said. "Her mind is not stable." Mama Lillian recoiled at the words, pain flashing across her features. "I may be poor, but I am not mad," she cried. The billionaire inhaled slowly, like he was holding back something heavy. "Lillian, if you hand over the notebook, no one will hurt you." "Notebook?" Amina's pulse raced. "You think I still have it?" Mama Lillian whispered bitterly. "You think I kept proof that could get me killed?" He stepped closer. "You did keep it. Because you're the kind of woman who clings to truth even when it destroys her." His words weren't cruel. They were sad. Heavy. As if he knew her. Amina noticed it now, the recognition in his eyes. This was not a simple pursuit. This was history untangling itself in public. "How do you know her?" Amina asked softly. The billionaire didn't answer immediately. His eyes flickered with something that almost looked like pain. "Finally," he said, "she once worked for my family. Many years ago." Mama Lillian looked away, tears spilling down her cheeks. That was before your father showed the world who he truly was, she whispered. A sound like a crack formed in the billionaire's expression, barely visible, but real. Amina looked between them, confused. What did she witness? She asked. The billionaire's body went still, every muscle tensing. That is none of your concern. It became my concern the moment you walked into my stall, Amina shot back. For a moment, he stared at her with an unreadable expression, surprise, annoyance, maybe even respect. Then he sighed. I'm trying to protect her, he said quietly. Mama Lillian let out a bitter laugh, the sound broken. Protect me? Is that what you call covering up your father's sins? Lillian, he warned, voice low, don't do this here. But she was shaking now, not from fear, but from years of silence finally cracking open. You think I wanted to keep that notebook, she whispered. I held on to it because someday, someone had to know the truth about him. The billionaire's jaw clenched. The air thickened with tension. Amina felt the story tightening around her like a closing fist. Where is the notebook now? He demanded. I burned it, Mama Lillian said. A stunned silence fell. His eyes widened, just for a second, before he masked it. You're lying, he whispered. The old woman looked exhausted, as if every word drained her energy. Believe what you want, she murmured. But I won't go with you. Not until I tell her everything. She nodded toward Amina. The billionaire's face hardened. You don't understand what you're inviting into your life, he told Amina. This is bigger than you. Amina swallowed but lifted her chin. I don't abandon people. He studied her for a moment, then said quietly. Then you're in danger too. The warning was barely out of his mouth when a frantic shout came from the far end of the market. Run! Another group is coming. They're armed. Amina's blood froze. The billionaire tensed instantly. His guards reached for their weapons. Mama Lillian paled. They found us, she whispered. And with trembling hands, she reached into her shawl. Pulled out a torn piece of paper Amina had never seen before. And pressed it into her palm. Hide this, she whispered. Don't let anyone take it. The paper trembled in Amina's hand as chaos rippled through the market. Vendors dropped their baskets, mothers grabbed their children, and shouts rose like a violent wind. At the far end of the road, a second group of armed men pushed through the crowd, shoving people aside. The billionaire spun toward his guards. Protect them, he barked. But it was too late. Two gunmen pointed directly at Mama Lillian. Amina felt her throat tighten in terror. She grabbed the old widow's arm and pulled her behind her food stall just as wooden crates crashed to the floor. The billionaire's guards fired warning shots into the air, scattering the crowd and filling the street with screams. Give us the old woman, one gunman shouted. She has what doesn't belong to her. Amina pressed her back against the stall, shielding Mama Lillian. What do they want from you? She whispered, breath trembling. The widow's voice broke. They want the truth I never buried deep enough, and they want it erased forever. The billionaire slid beside them, breathing hard. We need to move. Now. His bodyguards surrounded them as they dashed into an alley behind the market. Bullets struck walls. People screamed. Dust rose like smoke. Amina clutched the torn paper tightly. She hadn't looked at it yet, fear had frozen her curiosity. They ran through narrow alleys, weaving between laundry lines and old brick homes until they reached a quiet courtyard behind an abandoned church. There, the billionaire finally turned to them. No more running, he said. You need to tell me what you kept. Mama Lillian leaned against the church wall, her breath thin and tired. When I worked for your father, she began, I was just a cleaner. Invisible. Quiet. But one night. I saw him do something terrible. The billionaire's eyes darkened. I know about his corruption. That's not new. It wasn't corruption. Tears welled in her eyes. He killed someone, son. Silence slammed into the space. The billionaire staggered back slightly, as if struck across the chest. Don't lie to me, he whispered. I wish I were lying, she cried. He killed his business partner in your own home. I saw it with my eyes. He discovered me, chased me, and I barely escaped through the kitchen door. Amina swallowed hard. He killed someone. Why? They were arguing about a secret offshore account, millions of stolen money. Your father wanted the partner out of the picture. The billionaire's voice trembled. And the notebook? I wrote everything down, she said, thinking it might protect me someday. But I knew they would come for me, so I burned it. His jaw clenched. Then why do they still want you? Mama Lillian slowly lifted a shaking finger, and pointed at Amina's hand. What you're holding, the widow whispered, is the only piece that survived. Amina's eyes widened. Her fingers unfolded the paper slowly. Inside was a handwritten accounting code, bank routing numbers, and a signature. The signature of the murdered man. Amina gasped. This is proof. It's enough to expose the offshore account, the widow said weakly. Enough to destroy the men who hunted me. The billionaire ran a hand over his face, eyes troubled. This could bring down entire networks. You don't understand the weight of this. But Amina stepped forward, tears shining in her eyes. She trusted me. I won't betray that. Before he could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Not gunmen. Not guards. Amina's stomach dropped. The billionaire raised his hands slowly. What is this? A senior officer strode forward. We received an anonymous tip about the location of a key witness. Behind the officer, appeared a man Amina recognized instantly from news reports. A second billionaire. A rival. The one whose empire collapsed years ago because of the murdered partner's disappearance. The man stepped forward, smiling crookedly. Thank you for keeping her safe, he told Amina, voice dripping with false kindness. Mama Lillian shuddered. Amina felt dread coil in her stomach. This man wanted her silenced too. But before he could speak again, the first billionaire, David, stepped in front of Amina and the widow. You're not taking her, David warned. She has information I need, the rival replied coldly. Information your father stole from my family. David's voice cracked. My father's sins are not mine. And I won't let you use her to wage your old wars. But the rival billionaire only smirked. Then who will protect her? You. His men stepped forward. Amina clutched the paper. Mama Lillian squeezed her hand. Then, something unexpected happened. David turned to the police. She is a witness to a murder. And I am turning myself in to testify against my own father. Everyone froze. Amina stared at him in shock. Mama Lillian did too. The rival laughed bitterly. You would destroy your father's legacy? David's voice shook, but his eyes were steady. I'd rather destroy his legacy than watch his sins destroy innocent lives. Police officers exchanged glances, then stepped toward the rival billionaire instead. Sir, one officer said carefully, you are also under investigation for tampering with evidence and attempted witness intimidation. The rival's smirk vanished. His men reached for their weapons. But the police moved faster. Within seconds, he was disarmed and handcuffed, screaming threats as the officers dragged him away. Silence slowly returned to the courtyard. David turned to the widow. His voice was soft. Lillian. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The widow's lips trembled. I never blamed you, she whispered. You were just a boy. You didn't choose your father's darkness. She touched his cheek gently, like a mother forgiving a child. Amina felt tears blur her vision. David took the torn paper from Amina and handed it to the police. This is the evidence. Protect it. Then he looked at Amina, eyes full of gratitude and quiet pain. You saved her life, he whispered. Amina shook her head. She saved mine first. She turned to Mama Lillian. The widow smiled weakly. You fed me when I had nothing left, she murmured. You reminded me that kindness still exists in the world. Her body sagged suddenly. David reached out. Amina caught her. Lillian. Amina cried. But the widow smiled, a peaceful smile. I can rest now, she whispered. The truth is safe. Her eyes closed gently as Amina and David held her. A long, aching silence filled the courtyard. She was gone. A woman the world had ignored, now leaving behind a truth that reshaped everything. Amina's food stall had grown larger. People came from all over to support the woman who stood up for justice. David visited often, always humbled, always helping quietly. Mama Lillian's name was cleared. The murdered partner's family found closure. And the truth, finally breathed free. Amina often stood at the corner where the widow once sat. Thank you, she whispered. I'll keep feeding those who have nothing. Just like you taught me.